Welcome to Discovery Watch with John Kaiser.
I'm Jim Goddard. Welcome back to the show, John.
Jim, happy to be back.
John, Mineral Mountain Resources released results from its Rockford project on Thursday, and the stock dropped sharply. Do we still have reason to watch for a discovery?
Mineral Mountain produced results which do not qualify as a discovery in the sense that it's game on. We're off to the races. We're going to, start drilling 25-meter step-outs to delineate a homestake ledge type of deposit. This is an ongoing strategy that they have there. It's a folded iron formation system. The standby syncline, it's like the keel of a canoe, and they're looking for these almost cigar-shaped, gold-enriched zones within the keel of this canoe. But it isn't just good enough that you have this, the same host geology as the homestake deposit. You also need to have had shearing that sort of made that cut through the keel of the canoe and made it brittle, so that when the fluid flow comes along, it has a place to get sopped up like a sponge. And finding out where exactly these shears cut the syncline, that is a process of vectoring. You can do your geophysics to see where the folds of the system are, and they have indeed done this. And they began a drilling campaign in January to try and prove that there are sort of big, sort of 5 million ounce zones similar to Ledge 9 from the homestake deposit present within the Rochford project in South Dakota. It's about 30 kilometers south of the homestake mine. That was a phenomenal world-class mine from which 40 million ounces were mined underground. Good high grade between 8 and 15 grams per ton gold. And the standby itself, it was mined 100 years ago, close to surface, and then it sort of seemed to peter out. It's had exploration holes in the past that have nipped parts of the standby syncline, but were never followed up because ownership in this old district was quite fragmented, and so whoever had the hole that came near it couldn't really do a deal with the owners of the small land positions. Mineral Mountain has changed that. It's assembled most of the land into a single package. It's digitized all the data. They have they have done a geophysical survey on it, the first of its kind, which allows them to tie this all together. And this program had a lot of high hopes. They did have a challenge last year, raising the money. They wanted to have at least $5 million in the bank so that they could do a proper job of using drilling to vector in on one of these homestake style ledge zones. But the reaction they got from the market was, well, if it wasn't found before, what makes you guys think you're going to find it? And this is a bit of a problem with this whole sector. The glass with regard to discovery is worse than half full. The market seems to believe that any junior that's shooting for a discovery is guaranteed to fail. And most of the time, the junior does fail to deliver an economic discovery. But there's cases such as Oyu Tolgoi, which BHP sold to Robert Friedland's Ivanhoe Mines. This is a project in Mongolia. It had a near-surface resource. The copper grades, weren't good enough. Friedland was talking about this. The Americans are going to end up doing the laundry of the Chinese down the road, and BHP said, you must be smoking something. What is this you're talking about here? Yeah, you can have this project. And Friedland managed to score a double whammy. Not only was he right about the China supercycle coming along and raising the real price of copper to a level where the existing resource would be in the money, but his team, when they started exploring in and around the system, which presumably BHP had maxed out, they came up with the Hugo Dummett zone. Is deeper, has to be block caved, mined underground, but it was substantially richer in gold and copper than the mineralization that BHP had put all its efforts into outlining at the surface. So there are examples where even where we know there's, okay, here was something there, it's not so great, exploration, fresh exploration, done properly, using data compilation and geophysics and aggressive drilling can lead to new discoveries. Now, what did Mineral Mountain deliver last week? Well, the first hole they drilled was designed to twin a hole Getty Oil drilled in 1980. It's about 100 meters or so down plunge from the surface. They found the core for this, but no assay sheet, so they have no idea what it ran, but they could see there was visible gold in the core. It was, an iron formation style host rock. Visible gold isn't really normal for a homestake style system. It does periodically occur, but they were curious what was going on there. So they drilled a twin hole, and this twin hole came back with only 3.2 meters of 2.8 gram per ton gold. It probably came within 20 meters of the initial Getty intersection, so it's not a true twin, and that's a bit of an issue with these folded iron formation systems, because if you're not in it, you will miss it, and you will not get the grades that you are looking for. So they stepped down down to 300 meters down plunge, and this was a fairly big step out, and drilled the second hole, and it came back with 6 meters of only 1.1 gram per ton gold, which is even worse than the first one. But they noticed that the arsenopyrite was more abundant in that core than the Getty twin hole. And they started drilling another one 30 meters farther down plunge, and they said, let's resubmit these assays for arsenic values, because in the homestake deposit there's not a perfect correlation, but there is a correlation of high gold grades and arsenopyrite. Typically, arsenopyrite will be 5 to 10% of the mineralization when gold is running in that 8 gram per ton or higher gold value that was typical for the homestake deposit. So they got the arsenic values back, and it shows, yes, there is a trend of increasing arsenic as we move down plunge. It's about 4% in the area where they pulled hole number 3. And this hole had 6.1 meters of 2.8 gram per ton gold, within which was a half meter of 9 grams per ton. That's neither wide enough nor high enough, the combination that you need to have a discovery. What they are looking for are intervals of 6 to 10 meters that are running 8 to 12 grams per ton gold, with a high arsenopyrite content running in that 5 to 10%. They put out a long news release in which they talked about proof of concept and gave examples of how when the explorers were chasing the different zones in the homestake system, they would get the similar teaser type stuff until they got into the system. The market, however, didn't really care. It wanted validation right away. The stock was in that sort of 60-65 cent range ahead of results, which is unusual because in this market, everybody has already written off a discovery success even before the drilling begins, and it sold down into the 30-35 cent range on 6 million share volume. On the plus side, somebody was buying the stock, so clearly somebody is optimistic that, yes, this is proof of concept. The next hole is going to be drilled 100 meters down plunge from hole number 3, and that hole itself will be used as a pilot hole to drill a fan of holes to grope around looking for that combination of interval thickness and high grade that tells them we finally found one of these homestake style ledges, and that becomes the basis then for doing 25 meter step outs, because you can't just do big step outs with this type of system. It's not like a porphyry system where you can do 100, 200 meter step outs and get similar mineralization once you have the system. Drilling stopped in early April for spring thaw. You didn't really want to move around with the super soggy roads. Drilling is going to resume this week, and we have our fingers crossed that this next hole will get lucky right away, but failing that, the fan of holes underneath it, they've got 1.8 million left. That's more than enough to finish their 12-hole program, of which 3 holes are done. So there is still reason to watch Mineral Mountain and its Rochford property for a discovery. And, another reason that maybe this project has attracted more interest than other Discovery Watch juniors is that this project is located in the United States. And at some point, given the direction that policies are going, there's going to be a wave of interest in exploring America for new gold resources. Nevada right now holds is the biggest producer in the United States. Other regions such as Idaho are starting to wake up. This area in South Dakota is also a potential revival for gold production, and it's going to take little companies like Mineral Mountain going in there, adding a new level of scientific method to the whole exploration project to come up with a new discovery and demonstrate that there remains gold to be found in places like the Black Hills of South Dakota.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after the break.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp. Inc., MGI on the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected high-grade gold, including 16.9 meters of 13.58 grams and 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program is planned to further evaluate previously identified subsurface high-grade gold mineralization. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, FPX Nickel has a 1 billion-ton low-grade nickel deposit in British Columbia that no longer really counts as an exploration discovery, but you do talk about it on Discovery Watch. Isn't the Dakar project just another nickel optionality story?
The Dakar project fascinated me when I first heard about it in 2009, 2010, because it involved a different style of nickel mineralization than is traditionally mined, which is either a sulfide type nickel deposit such as you get at Voisey's Bay and then sulfide in at Norilsk in Russia, or it's a laterite deposit such as those in New Caledonia, in Australia, where the rock has undergone weathering and the nickel has concentrated. Indonesia and the Philippines are big sources of these laterite deposits that are basically smelted down to get the nickel out of it. Fairly expensive to process. But what made Dakar unusual is that it's an ultramafic rock that does not have any sulfides in it, and it has these tiny grains of what is natural stainless steel, an alloy of iron and nickel, and it does not rust, so you do not get those big giant Gaussian type of systems. But there are other dimensions to this story other than the argument that because of its simple flow sheet, even a 0.12% nickel grade could turn this into an economic mine. Yes, at below $6.50 a pound nickel, this project probably doesn't work, so it is in a sense an optionality play. But there are other dimensions to it, and it really rang home to me about a week and a half ago when the New York Times published a very interesting article about how Oman's rocks could help save the planet. Oman is one of those little countries in the part of the Arabian Peninsula next to Saudi Arabia, and it has the world's largest ophiolite, which is a piece of oceanic crust. It's actually a mixture of all kinds of stuff that's been, instead of getting subducted back into the earth, has managed to end up parked somewhere high up on the continental crust. And the interesting part about it is the peridotite content. And peridotite is similar to what we have at Dakar. It's ultramafic. It has a high magnesium to iron ratio, and the olivines in it, they're not particularly happy at the Earth's surface. This rock is what most of the Earth's mantle is made of. But what this article was talking about is how in Oman this rock is on a live basis converting carbon dioxide into magnesium carbonate as tiny little veins that are filling the cracks of this rock. And the whole story about this was, is it possible that these big ophiolite bodies of magnesium-rich peridotite could be turned into a carbon sequestration system? So rather than trying to pump carbon dioxide back into the earth, or where it can escape again if there's some sort of earthquake that breaks the seal, or do some sort of large-scale geoengineering stuff like they're talking about putting things into the ocean and where you have all kinds of unintended consequences. What if we could harness these existing slabs of rocks that ended up on top of the earth rather than being shoved back into the mantle and turn them into big, giant carbon sinks? So, that got me thinking about the Dakar project, and in fact, the FPX Nickel has been working with UBC's Department of Earth, Ocean Science, with Greg Dipple, whose students have been working on this type of concept, in particular with tailings from big ultramafic systems such as Dakar and some of the platinum palladium deposits in places like South Africa, which are hosted in these layered ultramafic intrusion systems, and quite interestingly, a kimberlite, which hosts diamonds, is partly composed of similar types of rocks that also end up absorbing carbon and converting it into an inert form that's not going to bother anybody for a long time. In fact, De Beers is experimenting with this at places like Gaucho Quay to see if it can actually achieve the mining industry holy grail of being carbon neutral, which is the goal of having all its emissions, carbon dioxide emissions, completely compensated for, offset. And that's pretty much a tough goal, because it's unavoidable that you use gasoline or diesel for the trucks that are going to be hauling ore out of open pits, and you're just not going to capture that at the tailpipe end. It's going to end up in the atmosphere. But in the case of Dakar, this is a billion-ton deposit, only 1% of which would end up being extracted. It would produce a huge pile of tailings, and part of the cost of mining this is to keep this tailings pile stable over the long term, because there will be over 990 million tons of this material. And the discovery work being done by the UBC team is to figure out how can we, what's the right grind size for carbon dioxide to naturally get fixed by this magnesium-rich pile of waste and pull it out of the atmosphere. But they're also looking at ways of how can we force carbon dioxide into this tailings pile to perhaps put more carbon dioxide into it than the whole system the mine is producing through its tailpipes. And of course, the question I asked Peter Bradshaw, who's a geochemist, well, where are you going to get carbon dioxide? It would cost an enormous amount in the middle of nowhere here near Fort St. James to, pull it out of the air and stuff it into your pile. And he says, well, if this LNG Pacific Northwest pipeline ever gets approved, that Petronas of Malaysia wants to build, that pipeline proposal comes very close to our project, and there are a lot of pumping stations associated with an LNG pipeline, and these are all going to run on diesel because they're all in remote locations. You're not going to have a grid deliver electricity to them. And so these could be locally capture the carbon and compress it and be able to deliver it for disposal in a big, giant open pit mine like Dakar. So for me, it's still a discovery story because they are still discovering aspects of this, what's turning out to be a fairly unique type of deposit. In the beginning, they thought there would be many of these around the world, but it turns out the right conditions to allow the nickel iron alloy, the awaruite grains, to evolve to the right grain size so that it can be harvested in a sufficient abundance. That doesn't exist in very many parts of the world. So this is an unusual discovery whose potential to be a mine is still being discovered by the work being done by the company.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. A work program is planned for our Finland property that contains diamond-bearing kimberlite. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ADD, and the Frankfurt Exchange, symbol 82A1. Please visit our website at arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with John Kaiser. John, Cahuachi Mining is working on a PEA for its La Plata project in Ecuador, which is not expected until September. Yet today, the stock is up over 3 million share volume, the biggest trading day since the shell was reorganized in 2016. What's going on there?
Well, Cahuachi has been a bit of a disappointment for me. I first heard about the company a year ago in May at a Vancouver conference when Jonathan Goodman introduced the story. And what they had done is they'd acquired a 75% option on a VMS deposit that had been explored by other juniors and even majors in the past, but been found wanting. And then Ecuador descended into its Rafael Correa tax regime, where they basically ended up shutting down everything. They took on the project. They did drilling last year. They delivered a resource estimate which showed 1.9 million tons of a gold-enriched VMS deposit. This is the sort of thing, when one dreams about possibly a LaRonde type of system, which has both a gold and a base metal component. And it's at the current metal prices, the grade is it's $500 rock. So they are doing a PEA for an underground mine, which probably will have a capex less than $100 million. And to proceed, it's going to need an after-tax NPV of $100 million plus. And then you're looking at the stock. When I recommended it as a bottom fish at the end of last year, it was in that sort of 20 to 30 cent range. And at end of January, it collapsed down to sort of the 12 to 15 cent range. And it's been a bit of a puzzle to me. Now, one of the issues that came up in January was that Jonathan Goodman, who was going to turn Cahuachi into a company building exercise, starting off with the La Plata mine in Ecuador and possibly acquire other projects in Ecuador. He ended up having to take over as executive chairman of Dundee Corp after David Goodman had to take a medical leave of absence. And so the question is, well, he's going to be pretty distracted. But at the end of January, they appointed Alain Barreau as the new CEO. Now, Alain was with Pershimco Resources, which was a junior that had acquired the Cerro Quema project in Panama, which is a gold-copper porphyry system. They acquired it in 2011, pushed it from PEA through PFS, and we're in the midst of permitting and doing construction planning when that company, which by then it had 300 million shares, ended up getting a merger proposal from Orla Mining, which was a shell put together by Pierre Lassonde and Marc Prefontaine, I had featured it in my 2016 bottom fishing list as a little 10 to 19 cent stock, because I figured, okay, when these people own a bunch of stock, they'll end up doing something with the company, and it's quite incredible. They did a lot in 2016 in the July or so. They all of a sudden they raised $7 million with the unit financing at 50 cents, and it was still just a shell. And then not long after that, the Pershimco deal ended up. Let's merge these two companies. And Pershimco had been sort of drifting down at 10, 12, 13 cents, suffering from, we have way too much stock outstanding. How are we going to ever get this thing going? So it ends up doing the equivalent of a 5-for-1 rollback. By the time it all closes, the Orla is trading at $1.25, so the 25-cent stock is about $1.25. But in between, Orla has managed to raise $50 million at $1.75 from Bay Street before Bay Street got completely sucked into the cannabis vortex and was still willing to give money for these sorts of projects. And the connection to Cahuachi, I didn't really understand until I talked to Alain Barreau last week. And it turns out when the Cahuachi stock broke down in sort of late January, February, there was a persistent seller. It wasn't clear who was doing the selling, but when I asked Jonathan about what's going on here, it turns out there were some institutions which had undergone either mandate changes or fund manager changes, and all of a sudden Cahuachi was did no longer fit into the portfolio. And Jonathan had always played up the institutional shareholder base as an asset, a sign of strength for the company, though at the same time he acknowledged it would be good to have a retail audience also in there to balance when these institutions suddenly have to leave for some reason. But with the stock down at 15 cents, the funds not really cooperating and saying how much they needed to get rid of and find a new home for me, they ended up doing a financing of $3 million at 15 cents with a half warrant. What was interesting is that existing share insiders of Cahuachi, and these are all people like Jonathan and members of the board, took down 9 million of the 20 million units. And then it was a mystery, where did the other 11 million units go? Was it like more of these institutions digging into their pockets to keep this thing alive? The company was down to about $500,000 at the end of the year and obviously needed more money. But it turns out that Alain Barreau's Pershimco backers, which include entities like Sentient, they used this opportunity to reposition themselves in Cahuachi Mining. And this was not really well understood out there. So last Friday, I published an analysis explaining that here's the structure. There is still an overhang of institutional paper that's going to come out. Yes, we're down, 60% from my recommended price. So yeah, it looks like a really great pick. But the circumstances are temporary. A new group that has the ability to provide financial backing down the road has come on board. Insiders have positioned themselves. The company is cashed up. They will be doing more exploration drilling on La Plata project, in particular chasing the South Block deeper, where the South Block is higher gold grade. So if they can boost the resource, the high grade resource that will be mined up front, that'll be good for the economics of the project. Plus the gravity survey they did last year has identified a bunch of other targets. The company is looking at acquiring other similar VMS projects in Ecuador. There are signs that the Ecuador government under Lenin Moreno is moving towards maybe not eliminating the windfall taxes, which kick in at higher mining rates entirely, but raising the throughput level at which windfall taxes kick in. So there is this trend happening in Ecuador. The PEA, obviously they have preliminary numbers, and they wouldn't bring in an expert in advancing a project like this unless they, all they really needed to do was have the formal numbers all marshaled into place. So to me, this thing was an excellent opportunity for bottom fishers to come in. And this morning, all of a sudden, this stock goes from trading maybe 100,000 shares a day to trading over 3 million shares, jumping up. Hopefully, that is the whatever institutional paper that needs to be sold, coming into the market, into hands which understand the story, clean out the structural overhang. And once this is gone, the company can go back onto the uptrend that it was in May of last year, and which is a reason that I picked this as a bottom fish for my subscribers.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been speaking with John Kaiser, his website, kaiserresearch.com. I'm Jim Godley.
Comments made on Discovery Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at howstreet.com. Discovery Watch is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.